and it is recording. Welcome to the online session organized by the CERL Security Network. For this session, we have invited a number of colleagues who in their libraries and the archive were actively involved in planning their organization's response to COVID. From the Royal Library in Brussels, we have Jacqueline Lambert, who is also the chair of the Security Network, and Frédéric Lemmers. From Royal Library in the Netherlands, we are joined by Foekje Boersma. Angela Dellebeke works for the National Archives in the Netherlands, and Andrea Cappa is from the Biblioteca Nacionale Centrale in Rome. Us at CERL have very much missed organizing CERL conferences and our annual collection security summer school. Of course, that is because such events we always hear very interesting papers, but it is also because such events offer the chance for informal exchange of information during coffee breaks or over dinner. And this session is meant as such an informal coffee break, or in this case, maybe a tea break. Jacqueline, Frédéric, Angela, Andrea and Foekje will talk about their experiences with COVID in the last 9 months. And at the end of the conversation, we plan to leave some time for questions. If you have questions during the session, I'm happy for you to enter them into the chat and we can take them at the end. So without further taking up too very many topics to discuss, we're going to start this conversation, and I will try and guide it along a little bit so that we come to the end and have discussed all the topics within the time frame that is available. So the first topic that we thought we would address is lockdown. What happens when such an announcement is made? What do you do? Who do you contact? Be arranged and arrange. And I thought we should start with Andrea, because unfortunately in Europe he was one of the first ones to experience such a lockdown in Rome. Andrea, how did it happen in Rome? You got a message from whom, and what did you then do first?
As you said, Marian, we are maybe the first country in Europe to face with this emergency. And we had noticed this at the end of February of the spreading of the pandemic. But just on March 9, we had an official communication by the government. It was a decree of the government establishing a total lockdown. So we received in a hierarchic way from the government, and then from our ministry and the General Secretariat, a communication of total lockdown and closing starting from, it was the 10th of March, the first day that we were closed. And what happened at the moment? So all the activities which were on the run has to be suddenly stopped. So we should organize a sudden and very quick information and communication, both to the external staff and the readers and scholars and cultural partners. We had the exhibition on the run, we had conferences in preparing, and also internal communication, because the first aim at the moment was to guarantee, to ensure the protection of the collection and the safety of the people which was working with us and of the staff itself. But it was the first time to organize a real security presidium, because it never had been something like that. And we could do it. We made an effort to organize for the protection of collection. And I have to say that in the first wave of the COVID pandemic, we had no case of COVID inside. So we have been COVID-free, fortunately, and we had no damage at the spaces, at the structure, and no problems in the collections. We had the idea that with all the country closed, there was a real problem of security of collections. We could be.
Was it similar in the Royal Library in the Netherlands, Foekje?
Well, what happened in the National Library is, I was just sort of going back in my head to that moment. In the week I think we looked at the news, of course, like everyone did, and I think we took stock from what happened in Italy and the lockdown that was put in place. We called our crisis team together when the signs were really, really bad, and it looked like the country might go in lockdown. So we didn't wait until a decree from the government, but I do recall that we met daily and looked at the news and discussed what our response would be. And I think, if I recall correctly, we decided that the library would close before the actual government decree came out, but we felt that was our responsibility. It also was the end of the week and we weren't sure what was going to happen on the Monday. One of the major issues that we had to deal with was the fact that schools were closed, and therefore a lot of staff could not come to work as well because they had to look after children who couldn't go to school anymore. So it was almost another reason why we decided to close the building, and then we took similar steps as you just described, Andrea. Communication was our major focal point in getting the message out there, but the whole country went in lockdown, so it was kind of that's just what people did.
It is. And in the archive, Angela.
Yeah, well, I can remember, Foekje, when the National Library closed, you decided to close on the 12th because that was one of the reasons that staff at the archives also debated whether the archive should close or not. And to add to that, our friends from the Rijksmuseum, they also decided to close. And since we're neither library nor museum, but we also have exhibition rooms and we have a lot of paper, part of the management wanted to close and others wanted to wait for government to make that decision. But in the end, on Friday the 13th, the doors closed. But beforehand, we already had an operational team which looked into extra cleaning because of COVID and stuff like that. And when we closed on the 13th, over the weekend, we decided to form a crisis management team that could start on Monday, because, hey, it was the weekend.
Did you, in the Royal Library in Brussels, get instructed to close, or did you decide yourselves?
We received instruction, and in fact, a bit before the lockdown, we already had to decrease the activities, and we already had to promote telework. And then everything happened pretty quickly, and we had to close really quickly, and all the conference of our government happened on Friday, so we have always the weekend to cope with the new rules. And in fact, for all the crises in Cabiar, when a crisis happened, the management call the crisis committee, which is composed in function of the kind of crisis it is. And since the beginning of this crisis, all the stakeholders state remains vigilant, and we really rapidly answers and react to all the new rules coming. So reopening, reclosing, reopening, and so on. So it's the particularity of this crisis is the fact that we have to react really rapidly. It's not so easy. And it's also difficult for the staff because here you have a psychological aspect. So each time you have a press conference of the government, we know that all the staff members are listening to this conference, and then just after that they expect that this will have impact on their life and on their work, and we have to communicate really rapidly on different way. in order to reassure the personnel and to have no uncertainties. So we have to be pretty clear really soon, and it's something difficult because you can define guidelines, but and it was difficult at the beginning. When you have guidelines, you have also to put all the things into practice. And to put the things into practice, you have to buy material, you have to buy projects, you have to put all the things to rearrange some spaces, some rooms, and all this for us, it's also with the respect of the procurement legislation, the fact that all the people try to buy the same things is also difficult, and that is something really particular to this crisis. Maybe Frédéric can add some other things.
Yeah, thanks, Jacqueline. Right, as you said, we had to do it very quickly, like everyone, of course. But the main challenge was to be able to put the maximum of staff members in remote work. Some of them were already used with this practice 1 day a week, structurally once a week, but other not. And not everyone was in a situation to be technically able to work from home. So that was a very big challenge for our ICT department to be able to quickly install extra laptops, extra technical to make available extra technical applications, and to increase the remote accesses to the internal IT services, because of course many of us have to be able to work. Don't need only access to their email boxes, but to special files. For some of them, I think about the digitization department, they need to get access to the central servers to be able to work on the images and to go on with online publication of documents and so on. That was not the case before. So within a couple of hours, we have had, but we also had the opportunity to evolve quite significantly, to significantly evolved within our work practices. But we did it, and in fact we got a very good reaction from the staff members, because some of them didn't have any internet connection. They bought it. Other had just personal devices. They used it just to remain connected to the library and its activities. But that was the shocking reaction. Of course, a few months later, the situation is different, including in the perception of the staff members.
Yes.
But that was the situation when it appeared. So only a few days after Italy and the other countries, if we come back to this period, we closed on the 19th
Right. Yeah.
of March.
So all 4 or 5 of you mentioned this crisis management team. How did that work in terms of your official management structures and your crisis management structures? Because this crisis has been going on for such a long time, I can imagine that there might be some that it might be unclear who has which mandate. Foekje, is that something that you would like to comment on?
Yeah, that's definitely something that we struggled with a little bit, and that's a lesson learned for us. We started off with the crisis team being in charge, which is what our procedure calls for, and that works really well. But of course, then you come into that period where the crisis keeps going on and on and on and doesn't really have an end date in sight. At that point in time, it was decided on the level of the directory board that there should be a more practical team in place to deal with. At that point in time, it was the reopening of the library. This was in June. And this Corona coordination team was then put in place to get the library ready to reopen. So they were working out the practical measures that had to be taken, implementing plastic shields for staff, walking routes, all those really practical things. And that worked very well. But then we got into a situation over the summer where people were taking time off. In the Netherlands, the restrictions were easing down. And I wouldn't say it felt like it was back to normal, but things slipped a bit. And when we came back after the summer and it was clear that the virus was on the increase again, it wasn't really clear in our library who was in charge, who was the person to go to when you had a question about, can I do this or can I do that? And in the head of the director and the directory board, it was still this Corona coordination team that was the team that was coordinating things. But the people in the crisis team didn't know that. So there was a lot of noise on the communication line. It took a couple of weeks to get that back down to manageable levels and to say, okay, this is how it works. And again, we have our Corona coordination team in charge of decisions and implementing measures. And that works. They're on the ground, they're in the building, they can take fast action. And the crisis team is basically dissolved. So that's how we dealt with it.
Yeah. Is that similar in Rome for you, Andrea? Oh, you have to unmute yourself. You're still quiet.
Yes, I'm sorry. I agree that one of the real topic of all this discussion is that many things has changed and anything has to be very quickly. So to create crisis management, to involve the necessary departments or the involved people to make a coordination of all the communication and the activities. I have to say that for us, it was actually also the first time that we started with the home working. Nobody was before in home working, and the healthcare of the workers brought us to improve suddenly and very quickly all these measures, but with a very quick adjustment of all the proceedings. So it has been a real effort to coordinate work and to guarantee at the same time remote work, home working, healthcare, and the presence in the libraries, because we cannot forget that we are institution opened to the public and used to receive public and to have work and job with collections. So we need someone to stay here. And we had to face with all the vulnerable workers or with all the people coming from the interland and using trains and public transport. So the need of protecting at the top level someone, but at the same time to individuate, to identify people who had to be in the staff physically in the library. And this has also been a big chance because now we had to improve a lot of proceedings. We had to improve our ICT office. We had to make a very strong management between direction, curators of collections, information offices, and ICT offices mainly.
You mentioned communication. Jacqueline, do you want to say something about communication in this time? I assume it's a lot to staff, but also internally on management levels, and maybe even with external parties who provide advice or are responsible.
Kabir put a lot of energy in communication and on different with different approaches. Firstly, for the staff, each time we have communication and new rules coming from the government, they are directly inform about the new decision. So it's on the Friday evening that we received the new rules, and on the Sunday an email is sent to all the member of the staff with the guidelines that will be applied in the coming days. During the lockdown, we also directly were aware that it was important to act on the psychological aspect, and the board of directors developed a newsletter, and in this newsletter we gave news from all the colleagues. So it was asked to the department to explain what they were organizing during the lockdown, what they were working on, and so on. So we gave some news about that. We also gave news in this newsletter about the future. So, okay, we are in lockdown now, but we are preparing the reopening, and we are doing this kind of stuff. A lot of information, also specific newsletters for the public, a lot of information of the website, information on Facebook, and we encourage all the heads of department to organize things within their department. So video calls with the team, and so on. When we come back to work in May, all the people who have to come back on the site was contacted personally by phone to see if there was any problem with that, because everybody doesn't live the COVID as the others. So some are more philosopher, others are really scared, and some have problems with the children or something other. And we asked them what was the problem, also the problem with the public transport, and so on. So we give a lot of time to feel how the people feel, and to help them, to accompany them in this coming back, because it was a special step for them. And when they come back on the site, we welcome them. Each one was welcomed by a member of the prevention department, and we gave them materials so that they feel comfortable, mask, gloves, alcoholic gel, and so on. So we have put a lot of energy on the communication, because we directly feel that it was a very special crisis, and that it was important in order to get the buy-in also for the rules, because they're coming back to work, but with a lot of rules to respect. And that was the challenge, because it was only if the rules were respected that the system was sustainable. So it's something really important. And a few weeks after we come back to work, we organize survey within the staff members, and also survey for the readers. Fred, you want to add something?
You said a lot, already a lot, thanks. No, perhaps just to say that we had to be creative to give work to people for which the function was not an evidence, if they had to do it from home. So that was a good occasion to test transversal cooperation between departments and services, and it worked very good. In fact, it was very strange and very good to see that that most of the staff members who started to work together on new tasks really took part in video conferences, really good made their job, which was unusual, as I said, and that was very new, in fact, for our library, and very positive for the global team spirit, not the team spirit on the level of a department, but on the whole institution's level. But that was during the confinement, so the period where everyone, as you know, thought that it would be limited, and thought that there was something to remain connected to the world of before. So that was the period before the summer. For the rest, no, as Jacqueline said, a lot of communication and a lot of work during the weekends, more and more every weekend since September. So the board of directors and the crisis coordinating group is watching to the press conference during at apéro time on Friday evening. And after that, instead of starting the weekend, they start to organize the new organization of the work. And as Jacqueline said, yeah, it starts on Friday evening, and it's usually finished by the end of Sunday to be implemented on Monday. It works pretty good, but this is a lot of extra work, of course.
Okay. I don't know if people have noticed, but we've lost our host. Marianne just sent me a message that she was kicked out, but luckily for the system, it assigned me to be the host. So I'll take over from Marianne for the moment, and I will ask the next question. Let's see, because we have a script that we stick to. Let me just. Okay, so remote work has already been mentioned by a few people. I guess we all had to face that to get the wheels in motion. Maybe Angela, you can talk about what that meant for the archives, the National Archive, working from home, and was the archive ready for that?
Yeah, we were totally ready. We're totally ready and prepared. Now, the thing was that we all have laptops from work. It was a whole system that was implemented, timely, so to speak. We all have smartphones, so there was really no reason why we couldn't work from home, except for the fact that a lot of people's work is at the location. A lot of people work with the collection. But still, there was, I think, two departments, one supportive IT department, which consists for 80% of hired forces, which took up a lot of room at the location. They eventually could all work from home. So this is one thing for the future to remember. There was another department that could also work totally from home, but that made for some social issues that Jacqueline has mentioned already a little bit. And when we closed, we reopened not until June, but it also meant that we allowed through a type of system to have people in the office to do scanning on demand of items that need to be registered and stuff like that, that made it possible for others to work from home more. So overall, it was not too bad. I think that the people from the Department of Collections have been coming in and out of the office to do work in the office. Some stay for 1 or 2 days during the whole period, and others do come in and make preparations for colleagues to be able to work from home.
Marianne, I see you are back.
I'm back. I'm very sorry. I was completely thrown out. So I think you've talked about communication and elements about lockdown and crisis management. I wanted to ask, were there things about those 3 topics that you would do differently now, if with hindsight, you know, the benefits of 2020 vision, looking back? What did you learn? What would you try and do differently next time? Jacqueline?
It's a fact that we have already learned with the first lockdown. The second lockdown, which is a little bit less severe than the first one, is addressed on the way. And it's a fact that in the first lockdown, we had only a few people coming to the library for some technical aspect. But in the second lockdown, we have a little bit more people, because it's a fact that when you focus only on one risk, you forget the other risk. And it's important to have a little bit more people coming to have a look on the collection. On the other hand, we are also developing, as Angela said, we have more digital on demand, and there Frédéric can say more about that. And we have people that coming for digitalization and so on, so that we can give also work to the others. So I think that it's a little bit more mature in order to keep everything safer than in the first lockdown, because it's something that is also important. And I realize that with the fact that when you turn on the television, you only hear things about COVID and so on. Everybody was really focused on that at the beginning. And even they forget that the other risks were not on holiday, and that also some new risk raised with the COVID. For example, one of the measure to respect is the disinfection of the hands, and we have to buy hydroalcoholic gel, but those products are flammable, and we have to order that and to have in large quantity. But the storage of those products are particular, and all the institutions are not ready to do that on a proper way, and it's something really important. So it's things that we have to learn from this crisis, is that we have really to not to forget the other risk, and also to see what were those risks, so that in the future the institutions that were not ready to cope with that newer aspect will be able to cope with.
Foekje.
Yeah, can I just add to the shifting of risk, because I think that's a very good point that Jacqueline just made. Because what we did especially well, since the first lockdown, was to increase and put forward renovations to our building, which were planned to be happening over a much longer period of time. But because there was nobody in the building, no staff, it was easier for building staff and technicians to come in and do renovation work. And that all sounds very plausible, but it has actually created new risks. And in a second lockdown, again, we had an intensification of our building work. We are ripping out our carpets in our reading room. And of course, that's wonderful. If there is no public there, it makes it a lot easier. But we had to create temporary spaces where people, the small numbers that are still allowed to look at the collection, can access the collection, especially the special collections. And it was at this point that I learned my lesson from the first lockdown, where we weren't totally on top of what was going on. And it turned out that, you know, there was, after building work, there were leftover bits and pieces, dust, even, you know, just rubbish that could have been thrown away. It was left inside places where there was collection. So that wasn't very good. And in the second lockdown, especially because we're dealing with the reading room of the special collections, the coordination team that I mentioned on the floor decided to rearrange the setting and create this tiny little space for accessing special collections. I made a very strong point about security because I was put on high alert by an online conference we had in the Netherlands, and the police literally warned us that, especially in this day and age when there is less control, there is a heightened risk for thieves or people with ill intent to do something to your collection that you do not want. So we have increased our security measures. They're different, but our security coordinator said if we take out one measure of security because we are doing this building work and facilitating this building work, we need to reintroduce 2 others. So that's the sort of principle we're working with right now. If we take away one measure, it has to be replaced by 2 different new measures that affect security. And it's sort of been my mantra these last couple of weeks because I'm very nervous about this period. It does sound a bit scary, and I know the work has to go on, but yeah, it's a lesson that that I learned from the first lockdown.
Foekje, I know I'm not allowed to ask questions until the until the end, but he is on part of the panel. Could you, without giving too much away, give an example of taking one out and putting 2 in?
Okay, so we take weight measurements of our books before we hand them out in our special reading room. That particular measure was not possible anymore because we had to move the desk. So instead we said we want to have 2 people supervising. So not just a one person dealing with the customer and talking to the customer, but a second person who was just there looking at the CCTV and observing the people. So yeah.
Yes, thank you. Good.
Marianne, we can't hear you. At least I can't hear you.
Nothing.
Technology. Maybe somebody else in the panel would like to comment on that. I know, Andrea, you mentioned several times the security issue.
Well, for what regards the National Library Room, we had a very strong coordination of the security protection for the special collection and manuscript department, as I said before, because we create a very massive presence of the curators. So we always have been here. And as I was saying, taking advantage also of the possibility of doing cataloging work in the office, in the SIT. Because as we said before, you can make remote working, home working, but not all the activities can be managed like that. So you have to be creative to find some works to find in homework. But some days you need to stay here. It's what we try to do, me and my colleagues in the manuscript department. One interesting thing I would like to share that regards the difference between the first lockdown and the second lockdown. At the first, we had to be creative. At the second one, we have been prepared. It means that a library is always a library. So what we have been asked strongly by the intellectual community has been to provide services, the services that a cultural institution has to provide. So at the first stage, in March and April, we try to organize bibliographical information, other ideas to support research and studies. And in a few weeks, we arranged Skype bibliographical information via Skype and via online platforms, and a document delivery free service. So we are started to make free reproduction in a low resolution to support all the researchers which were asking us contents. And so this period was organized between April and May. And at the first lockdown, we had to create all these activities. Now at the second lockdown, we have been closed at the beginning of November. The day after, we were ready to start with all the replacement of the physical activities with these digital contents. And so we are producing digital contents, we are upgrading our digital portal, and we are satisfying the cultural request of students, scholars, intellectual community. We are trying to do it, but we are now prepared. At the first time, it was all to be created.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm just looking at Marianne to see if she's back on. No, can't hear you. Okay, well, maybe I just kickstart the next topic, or basically it's a follow-up of this conversation about security. It's another thing that I mentioned to Marianne as well that was happening to us in the first lockdown, and I'm just curious to see if the other panelists had the same issue. During the first lockdown, we still had some of our collection items on display in other institutions. I mean, we are, I guess you do the same. We give items on loan. We are very proud and we like to facilitate other exhibitions with objects from our collection. But yeah, in the first lockdown, we had several collection items in museums, historic societies that were on display. And of course, those institutions had to go in lockdown as well. That was a little bit tricky because you have to deal with, you want to guarantee security and safety for the objects, but you don't really know how the other institution is organizing everything. Is the climate going to be okay? Are they under constant light exposure or not? Would we allow somebody from that museum to open the showcase and take the item out? Where would you store it in the meantime? Is it still covered by insurance or the loan agreement, which has a very specific amount of time? And this was going on for several months. So I'm just curious how the other panelists, how did you deal with this issue? Did you have to face this as well?
Well, I think we didn't deal with it at all. The amount of material that we have on loan is wasn't that much at the moment. So I think the only thing we had was at the Rijksmuseum, and we decided to trust them. But the other thing was that we did have restorers working on material that was supposed to go out on loans. Yeah. So we did contact several institutions to discuss whether they were still on track with the planning for whatever it is that they wanted us to do. But in regards to your issues now, we didn't have them at all.
And in Belgium?
I don't know, Fred.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I'm very sorry. Could you repeat the question, please?
I was just wondering. Okay, I was just wondering if you had to deal with items that were on loan to other institutions during the first lockdown, and if so, how did you deal with that? So they were in exhibition in other museums or institutions.
I didn't hear anything about that, so I don't think. I think the things have been blocked. I don't have any other information on that. But this is, of course, a very good question.
And Andrea,
internally, the only thing I can say is that for the second lockdown, we have But that's a very good question. In fact, perhaps we should stress the question internally, because at the second lockdown, we have had to close the new museum after 1 month, and we have bringing the pieces back into the stacks for conservation and security reasons. So yeah, that's a point we have to check.
What happened with the pieces we received from other institutions? Do you know that during the?
They are still they remained in the museum. I'm sure.
But it's a fact that we.
Sorry.
It's a fact that we have absolutely to contact the insurance to see what happened, because what you mentioned, does the contract go on or not? It's really something important to know for the future, because we can be confronted to such a problem in the future, and it's a fact that it's something really, really important to know what happened with the insurance, because we are out of the contract, and maybe it's something that can have an influence and will make the contract evolve for the future to have something that mentioned this possibility.
And you, Andrea, did you have to deal with this?
If I remember correctly, we have just a couple of items in an external exhibition dedicated to Raphael, to the 500 years from the death of Raphael. And there was a very great exhibition here in Rome dedicated to the artist. And we sent as an external loan these two collection of engravings. And but it was easy because the exhibition was extended, the deadline was extended, and the sponsor took on himself all the charges of the additional charges for insurances and so on. What we did with the personal loan to the readers is it has been just to extend for 1 month and then to 2 months the personal loans, because from the 9th of March, we have been closing till the 18th of May that we reactivate the loan service just at the entrance of the library. So we didn't not allow people get inside the offices, but just at the entrance, the main entrance of the library. So in this period, we extended the deadlines. The only thing that was reasonable to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I think my only lesson learned from our experience, because we did have some items on display in a historic house, because we like to facilitate loans. So we often make agreements and make it possible for vulnerable items to be on loan when conditions are not, perfect, but with some practical tools like silica gel, you can buffer a showcase and you can make it possible. What was good is that in that particular instance where we did have items on display in such a location, we included a data logger. So we were able to monitor the conditions from our computer, basically. And there was a benefit because the Historic House Museum had to close as well. We were going into the winter. So they would have otherwise turned the heating on, which would have influence the climate in a negative way. And we told them, can you please just put it on a very low heating, so that's maybe 12, 15 degrees in the rooms, but do nothing else. And it was a very good communication, and it worked. And so we were able to maintain the items in a safe environment. But we learned from it. So in the future, we're going to be a bit more, we're going to judge the risk of something not being able to return within the period that you agree because of another lockdown, or we're asking museums and other cultural institutions if they really need to have the original, or if maybe a high resolution copy is okay to illustrate their exhibition. So the loans have been on a bit more on a on a negotiating level, and not as easy as they were in the past. Hopefully that will change again, but that's how we deal with it now.
I saw that Marianne has asked the other participants if there were questions. So I know there's one question that was already typed in about from Andy. I suppose Anne also had a question. Oh, Addy had a question. When we had staff working from home and people had no personal internet connections, how we dealt with that.
I can give our feedback from our experience. Sorry. Yes, only a few ones, but we had some people who didn't have any internet connection, and as the library is not providing its staff members with internet connections, we tried to convince them to do it. That was the right moment to come back into the actual society, and it worked. For the majority of them, it worked. Of course, the alternative was that they should remain at home without any work to do, which was allowed, but only during the first lockdown. Because, as Andrea said, the currently situation is completely different. It's not anymore an urgent situation where everyone is doing what is best to react and to survive to the crisis, but we are in a situation where things have to be thought, have to be correctly implemented, have to be made to ensure the continuation of the day-to-day and the projects and the delivery of our legal mission. So, but today there is no problem with this question of internet connection.
You also help people financially. You know, there was some compensation for the fact that working from home, you have additional costs like internet or heating.
There is there is a compensation, but in comparison with what the fees I can see in the private sector, my wife, for instance, this is another world.
Mm.
This is only a few euro each by month for us.
Okay, that's a bit more for us.
But would it also mean that this is really unfair of me for me to be able to ask a question? But would it also mean that in order to meet the legal requirements of the work that's been set, that you that people are that it's mandatory for people to buy a computer or a laptop themselves from their own money?
It was not mandatory. This is why I said we tried to convince them.
Oh, yeah.
So we were not obliged to. We didn't have the, of course, the power, but the if you are not able to provide the people with, you don't have the power to force them to do, of course. So no, this was just a question of persuasion, and it was enough in this case. But in parallel, this is true. This is important to mention that this situation increased the level of equipment the staff members received from the library. So that was a great opportunity to ameliorate their work condition from home. But it doesn't mean that one day to another the library would pay and invest the whole panoply of equipment. For instance, we don't have any smartphones paid by the library. Some of them only get the abonnement, you know. But concerning laptops, yes, everyone can receive a laptop from the library. Everyone receives a keyboard,
a desk chair,
and this kind of things, a bigger screen, and there is also a follow-up of the conditions, and that's very important. I think a follow-up of the working conditions from home, thanks to a survey made with Impriva. So the cooperation we have with the work medicine. Is that the right word, Jacqueline, in English? I don't know.
The occupational practitioner.
Sorry?
The occupational physician.
Occupational physician. Okay, thanks. And if you are making the test, of course, to be in a good situation, working from home in good situations is the result of many factors, and equipment is only one. So the library is providing tools, thanks to this this survey, to check if your own situation is correct or not, and if and of course a part of the investments can be made by the library, but the other parts not. And this is, of course, yeah, a source of differences between staff members, of course.
Yeah.
If they are working, I saw it for just a very short example. It was amazing to see, but everyone made this constatation, but it was amazing to see the difference of proactivity, wellness, and so on into departments between people who were living alone or in family with little children, of bigger children, with little apartments without any terrace and gardens, or big villas with big gardens. That was a world of difference, of course. And well, we have been very tolerant in the capacity of the people during the first lockdown, with the capacity of the people to react and to assume the situation in function of their own reality.
Maybe Anne, you can ask your question, because I see that you say you have a question, but not.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, I have one or two questions. The first one is, have you reopened your library by now after the second lockdown? And the second one is, how did you deal with, I don't know how you say in English, the quarantine, because it was a big problem after the first lockdown, but how to manage with the books. And it's always a problem for us to manage with this, because it's very complicated to keep the books in a special store and then to store them back in the original stacks, and the readers can't get back the book they had the day before. So I would like to know how you manage with this.
I can comment on that. Yes, we reopened. I think it was last week. And with regard to quarantine, actually, I keep stressing to my staff that I want to call it isolation. Because we have a quiet, not that you have to do that, but it's just because we have this, we have a quarantine room in our building where we quarantine, usually quarantine material that has fungus or insects, or that's our quarantine space. There's a deep freezer there. And so if I say I put something in quarantine, it would mean that it would go into that room. So we have called it isolation, just to make the difference that isolation is material that we do not want to touch, because it may be infected by the virus. So we've been following the study of the Realm group in America and looking at their outcomes. Initially, when there was no, there wasn't enough scientific evidence for the longevity of the virus, we were on the cautious side of 9 days, which was basically at the first reopening, and that immediately proved totally impractical. You couldn't put that into practice. 9 days was not consistent with a work week. It was affecting just normal procedure. It just didn't work, and so very quickly, luckily, from the Realm research, the first results came out, and it showed that in our interpretation after day 3, it really looked like most of the virus was at least no longer measurable. It might still be detectable, but it's not measurable. And we had a discussion in the library to say, okay, what does that really mean? How do we interpret that? And we felt that that was a safe limit, because if you want to be sick from something that is detectable but not measurable, the quantity is so small that you probably have to eat the book. And even then you might still not get sick from it. So we tried to be very pragmatic about it, and we said, okay, 3 days. Then we went into, well, we were again confronted with the practicalities of the library, where you, like you said, you have people coming in and requesting a book and coming back the next day for the same book. So we decided that in general, we would not put items in isolation anymore, because we feel we have to take the measures, the precautionary measures at the start. That's our baseline. That's our biggest line of defense. So we ask people who come to the library if they are healthy, if they do not have a cough or a sneeze. If we notice that people are sniffing or coughing, then we will ask them to go away. We ask the same of our staff. And we ask everybody to wash their hands. So when visitors come into the library, they have to wash their hands with water and soap. We do the same for the staff. We actually enforced hand washing as the major means of hygiene, rather than the gels that Jacqueline was talking about, because we feel that the gels leave traces on hands, especially with special collections. You do not want to transfer those to the items. So we have basically enforced hand washing as the major line of defense, and the 1.5 meter distance and all the other precautions, the face masks. So in theory, we might still ask for isolation of 3 days, but only in cases where there has been a known infection. So if a person who has handled the material was infected with COVID, or in cases where it's easily implementable. So for example, with digitization, if one person handles the item, that already reduces the risk. And at the end of it, it might go 3 days in isolation before the next person picks it up and puts it back in the storeroom. So it's a bit more pragmatic. We are aware there is a risk, but we also feel that from the results of the studies, that the amount of virus that is detected is so small that it would almost be impossible for you to become ill from it. You'd have to have such a sequence of unlikely happenings to occur for you actually to become sick. So that's how we deal with it.
In Rome, when we first reopened in mid-June, the quarantine problem was the real topic, because maybe it was the real one which nobody had the final word about. There were different theories, there were different guidelines. The Central Institution for the Restore of Archives and Libraries in Italy was providing guidelines speaking about 7-8 days. There was the idea of 9 days. And finally, we decided with our government's guidelines provided by the Ministry of Health that the right time to make quarantine was 9 days. And we have been making quarantine for 9 days. So any single book which was coming back from the loan services or which was studied in the reference rooms had to be packed in a plastic bag, then transferred and remoted and then located in quarantine rooms with a label with the date written clearly of the day of use. And until the 10th days, it couldn't get back to the stacks. So it seems a big organization for a national library, but it also was meaning that if another reader was asking for that book, the book was not available. This has been both for the ordinary books and both in the special collection and manuscript department, which is a separate area, but which with less users and less books. So for us, has been easier, but I saw rooms full of books making quarantine. And this situation has been lasting until the 1st of August, when another decree containing more practical guidelines stated that because all the things that Foekje said, things that are inside the library has to be wash the hands. So we check the use, we give soaps and alcohol products. So just the books coming from outside with loan services still make the 9-day quarantine. Books which are used inside the library, they make no quarantine at the moment. So we just take back and send them to the stocks and they are available. Because the condition to get inside the library is to pass through thermoscanners, to hygienize the hands at the first entrance, then in the reference rooms. So this is what we are doing right now. And this has been meaning that we can also let people use the open shelves volumes, which were not allowed in the first part. They were out of use because of this problem of the contacts.
Okay, I see another question and a little bit of discussion coming through the chat, which is about how to deal with staff that was concerned about coming back to the library or to the archive in case of Angela's. How did you deal with that? Maybe Angela, you want to comment on that?
We had a group of people in the beginning when the offices were closed that are in building maintenance and stuff like that. They had no problem with coming to work, but we organized them to be able to come to work by car and asked them not to use public transportation. And the people who came to work later on when more allowed was, when more working on location was allowed, it was all voluntary. And we had one instance where one person said, "Well, I don't want to come to the office." And there was a couple of weeks ago, yes, there were people who were in contact with a colleague a week before who was not feeling very well, and they met at the offices, and they all decided that they did not feel comfortable continuing the work. And when later that same day it was announced that the colleague was infected with COVID, the decision was made to have the whole team go home and stay in self-isolation, self-quarantine, which also meant, because it was the team that worked in the reading room, that the reading room had to close for a whole week. That was a bit of a setback for the head of that department. But I think it was really good that that decision was made, because some people felt unsafe being in the office. And it's still, it's a different topic, but we still have, we also have COVID deniers and conspiracy thinkers who are asked to come to work, and they do. And they wear a face mask, which is now mandatory as of December 1st, when you're walking in the building. So that made for some serious discussion, and it remains like that till today, because you have to address that type of behavior. The deal is, if you want to come to work, it's on a voluntary basis. And if you are at work, you need to apply to COVID measures that are taken.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe the colleagues from Belgium?
Yeah, by us. Please do, Jacqueline, if you want.
With the problem of people having COVID within the staff members. So we follow the recommendation of our external service and occupational physician. And we have a tracing for all the cases. We have a tracing to define if they had contacts with other colleagues, and to define if they had contacts, if the contacts were high risk or low risk. And we have several questions to ask the people, and then we inform the people who were in contact with this colleague infected that, okay, you had low risk, so you can continue to come to work. You just have to be vigilant to take your temperature and so on. And for the other, they have to go to stay at home and stay in quarantine and be vigilant to see if they would have a problem. Fortunately, so far, we didn't develop any cluster within the library, but we have more and more people having COVID, and we proceed with this system that is something used in Belgium, because this comes from the external service for prevention, and we have something relatively standard for everyone, and it works pretty good. And once again, it's with contact with the people, with a lot of communication.
Okay.
But there is, if I can add something, there is a main difference between the situation in the Netherlands is the fact that the people who are working on site are not working on because they want, on a voluntary basis. This is the instructions from the authorities have been very clear. Working at home remain the reference for all functions who can be done correctly done from home, but all functions which are implicate a physical presence have to be done on site. And so facility department, cleaning department have to be at least a part of them have to work on site. Digitization department has to come on site to just for the production, so a few days a week. It's the same for the legal deposit to manage the arrivals and to scan the covers, and then they are producing cataloging from remote cataloging. That's a new one activity. But this is mandatory, and questions concerning the fact that people are not knowing, don't want to come, or start to critique the direction and the system increases. But because of this situation, they have to come, and this is not a library's decision. This is a state decision.
Yeah, I think that's a huge difference between your situation and our situation.
Yeah.
It also I don't want to demean in any type of way what we do, but at the end of the day, the archives are not of vital importance at the moment. So during the lockdown, we only or the first intelligent lockdown, as they called it here, we made a decision to have as few people at the location as possible, just to keep the building going and the works going, and integrated pest management. So this for the collection, and then later, when more work was allowed, it was the good thing was that management had to really think about what is it that we do that is of the utmost importance. So that meant that the reading room is one of the vital parts that opens first. and all the people attached to that. And that also meant that people who weren't sure that they wanted to come, we had enough that wanted to come to work, but we also knew that we had people working on different departments who could also do the work for the people in the reading room. That's one of the good points of having people working in your facility for, I don't know, 15, 20 years instead of the project based staff that we attract nowadays.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe that's sort of leading us to the final topic. I'm just looking around. Yes, sorry, Andrea.
Excuse me, Foekje. I will try to keep your attention just because I want to add one thing which can be maybe shared by someone of you. And the fact is that obviously all of us have been problem maybe with people frail, vulnerable, and with is needing a top protection and healthcare, so which was in danger or was anxious to come back in the office, or which was coming from the interland. But on the opposite hand, fortunately, we have also people that we cannot take at home because they want to come to work anyway.
Yeah. Yes.
And they balance. I don't know. There is a balance between the numbers, so that it's also goodwill of the people working sometimes to find the solution in this. And as you can see at my shoulders, I am in the office at the moment because we are dealing with protection or collection. But I have a little problem right now because exactly in 10 minutes they will switch off my electricity. So I'm gonna go because I'm just on the deadline of my office, and so I would like to say goodbye to anything and thanks all my colleagues. And I would like to leave you with a positive. It's very interesting to have this meeting in Zoom and the platforms, but I really wish for me and for all of you that next meeting will be in presence. So is what I want to leave you before going, before the electricity is turned off.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Excuse me.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Take
Bye-bye.
care.
Well, Andrea almost stole my thunder because I did want it to end on a positive note. So maybe I'll just ask the other panelists if they have one positive comment to make, something that you learned, something that is nice to look forward to, good takeaway from this whole experience. Jacqueline?
Yes, as Frédéric said earlier, we have this new spirit emerging in the library because people help each other to solve the different problems, and they discover also the other department, those who didn't have work to work at home, accepted to do some tasks for other departments, and so they discover what other colleagues were doing, and it's really positive. So for this aspect, it's really positive.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
And the rearrangement of the tiles.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yes, I can. So I can say the same thing as Jacqueline. It reinforced the links between people working in the library. And this summer we had a suicide, you say so. Somebody killed himself in the library, and it was somebody with which we had lost contact with him. And so we are doing a lot special formation to say that it is important to keep just in contact, to phone people being isolated, and to take care of each other. It seems not normal, but in fact it's a real job, and sometimes the problem is to know how far we have to go, because sometimes we need to be helped by doctors and psychologists and so on, because it's being alone for a long time when you are not very rich, when you have no computers, no way to work at your home. It's a very difficult period. And so we are aware of it now more than before. And we are very, well, we do a lot to reinforce the links between all the people working in the library, because we were much shocked by this suicide this summer.
Yes, I can imagine. Thank you for sharing that with us. It's yeah, that's maybe in itself not a positive, but it's a good point, and we should never lose sight of the personal impact this whole crisis has. Angela, do you have one more positive thing to give away?
I have never seen so many husbands, wives, children, cats,
Yes,
dogs. People coping or trying to cope with working from home, and it's people struggled, but they also shared struggles. They also shared light moments. We had people who decided to do a yoga class, chair yoga.
We had a meditation session.
There were pop quizzes, and I think overall there's a there's a lot of discussion about what's not good about your organization, what can be better. But I think that for the archives, we learned that it's not so bad. We do look out for one another, and there's a lot of app groups, people who are not working together and hardly know each other, but found out that they live nearby, started going on walks. And what I also found very positive was that we had a Monday meeting with the whole, it was a presentation type thing online. And there was one colleague who had a very, very rough time at home. He just called out to others and said, if you do have a rough time, reach out to one another. I've been struggling, and this is how I coped. And it was, it was also one of the people that other colleagues did not expect to have had a hard time. So that was really, I think that was really positive. It showed that there's a lot of trust.
Yeah, that's a good point. And Frédéric?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, but this crisis was a great opportunity to jump into more flexibility and more qualitative way to organize the work from home, especially and to offer to our public new services. We launched a digital on demand service, because if the collections were not accessible anymore physically, why not offer a virtual access to them? With respect of a minimal delay, of course, for the reproduction. So many things and positive things have been changed or have been implemented within the library since the beginning of this crisis. And it has been possible because of all the positive things you in general, or Jacqueline in particular for KBR explicited. So the fact that all together we try to remain connected, and this is building a positive context for cooperation, for helping its colleagues, and so on and so on. Personally, I think that video conferences are. We have been able to be more efficient in most of the activities we are doing every day. Perhaps except it for one thing, but today this is a very bad or good example. I don't know how to say it, but but this is very personal. But in my own job, I'm traveling quite a lot usually, and these missions are occasions to meet and for exchange with other people and to open my mind more than when I'm remaining at the library. So this is a big lack for me this year. I was not feeling it that during the spring, but at the end of the year, I only had to cancel all the missions one after one, and I've been able to see what we are experimenting today. That we certainly can make very interesting and efficient work altogether from online. But my question is, would it be possible and for in the long time? I mean, here there is a group. Most of people are knowing each other. There is a capital of a human capital on which we can capitalize to go on. It's the same with departments. You can cooperate online if you already have good team spirit. But this capital is going down, slowly going down. And if you are not able to physically meet, team building, travels, meetings, events, and so on, for me, this is a big question. How shall we be able to restart it? Because I am not seeing this energy growing up.
We get the vaccine.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. I was just going to end on a happy note. The vaccine.
This is an happy. But... this is not so a bad note.
No, but it's a very good comment. I think we all share your feelings, and we all miss the other aspects of interaction. I just wanted to add one more positive, which I thought was fantastic, that happened here in the Netherlands for this last lockdown, this 2-week lockdown that we just come out of. The government decided very specifically that libraries had to close. It was mentioned, libraries and museums close. And Angela was a little bit upset because they didn't mention the archives, but
we closed anyway.
Yeah, very specifically, libraries and museums close. And then it turned out the response from the public was amazing, because people said, no, libraries can't close. Libraries are essential. They're the core of the community. They should stay open. We don't have that much anymore. And the libraries are essential to our well-being. Well, to me, that was fantastic. I just felt, we are fulfilling a very important place in society. So on that very happy note, I want to thank whoever is still here, but also the people that had to leave because we were running a bit late. I want to thank Marian for kickstarting this, coming up with the idea and organizing the technical platform for it. And of course, Jacqueline for our wonderful coordinator of the security working group. And hopefully I see all of you next week. For Jacqueline, do you want to mention anything about that on the 8th of December?
So it's a total other kind of meetings. On the 3rd of December, several presentations will be at disposal of the people on the website of the CERL website. And the people can have a look on those presentations before the session of next week. And next week, they will have the opportunity to ask their question and to make comments about all those presentations during the session. So we hope that we will have success as today. And it's something that we would like to make recurrent for the future. So it's a sort of summer school online, I would say. And it's the fact that we really want to have a real summer school next week in presential, but it's a fact that for some of our members of our people of other institutions, it's not easy to have the money to go to those summer school. And with the presentation that we will put at disposal of all the people on the CERL website, we will reach more people and we will help more people. What is our aim is to help people in the fight against theft and vandalism for what concerns our group. And it's something additional that we will offer to the members and to the people interested in the work of the CERL Security Working Group.
Okay, well, with that, I think we can say good night